During World War II, there was a machine that followed every American bomber from hangar to runway. It towed B-29 superfortresses through the mud in China. It dragged P-47 Thunderbolts across Pacific Island airfields. Pilots and ground crews called it the bomber nurse. Over 8,000 of these machines were built. The United States Army Air Forces could not have operated without them. 26% of them were secretly manufactured by John Deere under a license that almost nobody talks about. But the company that designed this machine, the company that also invented the steering system used in every American light and medium tank for 13 straight years, never became a household name. Before the war was even over, that company ran out of money and was sold. Its name was Cletrac. This is one of the most overlooked stories in American industrial history. We are going to cover 4 chapters in this documentary. First, the family dynasty that made Cletrac possible. Second, the machines and the invention that put Cletrac on the map. Third, the tractor wars with Caterpillar and the World War II chapter that changed everything. Fourth, the corporate betrayal that wiped Cletrac off the face of the earth. By the end, you will understand how one family managed to create, lose, reclaim, and then destroy the same company within a single lifetime. To understand how a company this important could disappear so completely, we need to go back more than a century to Cleveland, Ohio, and to a family that built 3 separate industrial empires before losing all of them. In 1866, a man named Thomas H. White started a sewing machine company in Cleveland, the White Sewing Machine Company. Within 2 decades, it was not just making sewing machines anymore. The factory was producing roller skates, bicycles, kerosene lamps, and automatic lathes. Thomas White had 5 sons, and 3 of them would go on to shape American manufacturing in ways that most people have never heard about. Windsor handled administration. Walter ran sales and military contracts. Walter would die in 1929 from injuries sustained in an automobile accident. And the youngest of the 3, Rollin Henry White, born on July 11, 1872, became the inventor. Rollin graduated from Cornell University in 1894 with degrees in both mechanical and electrical engineering. He entered his father's factory in 1898, and almost immediately, he started solving problems nobody had asked him to solve. His father had purchased one of the early locomobile steam cars and found the boiler dangerously unreliable. It could overheat and explode without warning. Rollin redesigned it from scratch. He invented what was called a flash boiler, a system using stacked coils joined at the top that pulled steam from the lowest coil closest to the fire to control temperature precisely. It operated on superheated steam, generating power rapidly and safely. That design earned him United States patent 659,837 in 1900. It was the first of exactly 100 patents he would file over his lifetime, with the final one granted in August 1933. But Rollin did not stop at boilers. He built complete steam automobiles, and he built them faster and better than almost anyone in America. In 1901, he set a world land speed record for steam carriages at a 10-mile race in Detroit. By July 1905, a white steamer racing car nicknamed Whistling Billy reached 73.75 miles per hour at Morris Park Track in the Bronx, New York. That was a staggering speed for any automobile in 1905, let alone one powered by steam. The white steamer became so respected that the Secret Service ordered one to follow President Theodore Roosevelt's horse-drawn carriage through the streets of Washington. It was one of the first automobile ever used in official White House service. Rollin White's company produced more steam cars than any other manufacturer in America, exceeding even the famous Stanley steamer. Roughly 10 now. 10,000 White steam automobiles were built between the late 1890s and the early 19-teens. Fewer than 150 survive today. And then, in 1914, Rollin White walked away from all of it. The official reason was illness and recuperation, but the real reason was simpler. He had become obsessed with a completely different kind of machine. Not a car, not a truck, a tracked vehicle, a crawler tractor, something that could grip the earth and move across any terrain. And the White Motor Company had absolutely no interest in building tractors. The company was focused on trucks and automobiles. Rollin's vision did not fit. So Rollin traveled to his brother's pineapple plantation in Hawaii, not to a research laboratory, not to a competitor's factory, to a fruit farm in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the nearest industrial center. And there, in a workshop surrounded by tropical fruit fields on a Pacific island, he spent nearly 2 years designing and building the prototype of a tracked machine that would eventually be sold in 70 countries and help win a world war. The entire Cletrac product line, every model ever built, traces its origins to that workshop in Hawaii. If you find the history of how crawler tractors changed American construction and farming as fascinating as we do, take a moment to like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Because this story is about to get much bigger. In January 1916, the prototype was complete. Rollin and his brother Clarence returned to Cleveland and incorporated the Cleveland Motor Plow Company. The initial capitalization was $6 million. In today's money, that is roughly $170 million. This was not some scrappy startup built on borrowed cash. This was the White family's sewing machine, fortune, bankrolling an entirely new industry. The company did make one costly detour in the early 1920s. Alongside tractors, Rollin built a passenger automobile called the Rollin, manufactured inside the Cletrac factory under a separately incorporated Rollin Motor Company. The car used an engine similar to the tractor power plant and was intended to be affordable, but it proved too expensive for the mass market. Its best year was 1924, with roughly 3,600 units. By 1925, the automobile venture was bankrupt, and one Rollin car ended up in a place nobody expected. In December 1924, the steamship SS Lakeland sank in 205 feet of water in Lake Michigan near Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. Among the cargo were several automobiles, including one Rollin. Only 3 Rollin cars are confirmed to exist on land today. There may be as many as 5 more sitting on the lake bottom. In 1917, the company was renamed Cleveland Tractor Company, and in 1918, the trade name Cletrac was adopted. The name combines the start of Cleveland with a shortened form of tractor. The factory was established on Euclid Avenue in Cleveland, eventually settling at 19,300 Euclid Avenue, where it would remain for decades. The first 3 production models tell you everything about who was really behind this company. They were designated Model R, Model H, and Model W. Rollin Henry White encoded his own initials directly into the product line. Nobody outside the company would have noticed, but inside, everyone knew. The Model R was the first production Cletrac, a compact crawler tractor with a 4-cylinder gasoline engine producing roughly 10 horsepower at the drawbar and 18 at the belt. It weighed only about 2,400 pounds and was just 50 inches wide and 8 feet long. Flat bar and angle iron tracks. A 2-speed transmission. The price in 1916 was $1,185, roughly $31,600 today. It could plow 8 to 10 acres per day. Approximately 1,000 were built. And incredibly, serial number 101, the oldest known surviving Cletrac, was displayed at the 2016 Centennial Show by a collector named Rollin Henry from Grants Pass, Oregon. Still running after 99 years. The Model W followed in 1919 and stayed in production until 1932. It used a larger Whiteley engine with a 4-inch bore and a 5.5-inch stroke, producing 22 belt horsepower and about 15 drawbar horsepower. Priced at $1,385, it was later cut by $200 during the agricultural depression of the early 1920s. And the Model W carries a distinction that most tractor history books overlook entirely. In 1922, it became the first crawler tractor ever tested at the Nebraska Tractor Test Laboratory. Every crawler test that has been conducted since follows the precedent that this one Cletrac established. The Nebraska test revealed something important. The Model W showed only 8.8% track slip. By comparison, the Fordson wheeled tractor showed 36% wheel slip under similar conditions. Tracks were simply better at converting engine power into forward motion. But it was the Model F, introduced in 1920, that established Cletrac as a serious force in American farming. The Model F weighed under 2,000 pounds and offered something no other crawler tractor could match. It had adjustable width from 32 inches down to 43 inches, with 3 convertible configurations that allowed a farmer to switch the same machine between narrow row crops and open field work by swapping just a few parts. It also used an elevated drive sprocket mounted above the track, a design concept that Caterpillar would not adopt until the D10 in 1977. That is 57 years later. Cletrac also produced one of the strangest machines in its entire lineup, and it was not even a crawler. The General GG, built from 1939 to 1942, was the only wheeled tractor Cletrac ever manufactured. It was a 3-wheeled row crop design with a Hercules engine producing about 19 belt horsepower. 7,527 units were built. And here is the odd part. This same tractor was also sold under at least 4 other brand names. It was marketed as the BF Avery GG, the Ward's twin row through Montgomery Ward, a co-op tractor in Indiana, and a Massey Harris model in Canada. 1 tractor, 5 names. It may be the most rebranded piece of farm equipment in American history. And then came Cletrac's most important innovation. Not a tractor model, a steering system, U.S. patent number 1,261,082, filed in 1916 and granted on April 2, 1918, the Controlled Differential Steering System. Cletrac marketed it as True Traction. To understand why this mattered, you need to understand how every other crawler tractor and tracked vehicle steered at the time. Caterpillar and its predecessors used clutch brake steering. To turn, the operator disconnected one track entirely using a clutch, then applied a brake to slow it down. This meant all engine power was cut to one side during the turn. Energy was wasted. Brakes wore out quickly. The machine jerked unpredictably, and on slopes, a declutched track could cause the tractor to steer itself in the wrong direction. It was crude, and it was dangerous. Rollin White's differential steering worked on a completely different principle. Engine power flowed through a central differential housing containing pairs of meshing planet gears connected to both the left and right output shafts. When the operator turned the steering wheel, external contracting brakes engaged through a V-shaped gear arrangement that physically prevented both brakes from engaging at the same time. One track slowed down while the other track sped up. Power never stopped flowing to either side. There was no declutching, no jerking, no wasted energy, and no risk of self-steering on a hillside. Cletrac even built physical cutaway models of the rear-end assembly as sales tools, allowing traveling salesmen to mechanically demonstrate the differential steering system to farmers at county shows and dealerships. You could watch the gears work in real time and see exactly how power was distributed. The system had one limitation. It could not perform a zero-radius pivot turn, and each gear ratio offered only one efficient turning radius. But for agricultural and construction work, this was overwhelmingly superior to anything else on the market. And Caterpillar would not adopt any form of differential steering for approximately 70 years. By the mid-1920s, Cletrac had sold 40,000 crawler tractors across the United States and 70 foreign countries. Machines were exported to New Zealand, where they became popular with farmers and logging contractors. They were shipped to Australia, to Canada, where Cleveland Tractor Company of Canada operated out of Windsor, Ontario, and to England, where at least one collector is reported to hold original Cletrac factory training films that may be the only surviving copies. The factory on Euclid Avenue in Cleveland employed 1,500 workers at peak production. The full product line ranged from 12 to 100 drawbar horsepower across approximately 75 different models over the company's lifetime. In the early 1920s, Cletrac also placed advertisements in 70 leading agricultural magazines simultaneously and ran week-long Cletrac schools, giving farmers hands-on instruction with the machines. This was an early form of experiential marketing, decades before the term existed. Cletrac's assistant sales manager, a man named G.B. Sharp, later recalled taking orders for 50 railroad carloads of tractors, roughly 500 machines, at the Kansas City show in a single week. And Cletrac's controlled differential steering was about to become far more important than anyone in the tractor business had imagined. In 1932, the United States Army adopted Cletrac's steering mechanism as the standard system for every American light and medium tank. It remained the standard through the end of World War II, 13 straight years. The Cleveland Tractor Company manufactured 830 controlled differentials for M22 Locust light tanks and 4,731 for M24 Chaffee light tanks. Every American tank crew fighting in Europe and the Pacific turned their vehicle using a system invented by a man who started out fixing steam car boilers in Cleveland. Even the German Panther tank's Maybach double differential steering was a refinement of the same basic principle that Rollin White had patented in 1918. But Cletrac was winning contracts with the military while losing the tractor wars that mattered most. In 1925, the Holt Manufacturing Company merged with the C.L. Best Tractor Company to form the Caterpillar Tractor Company. C.L. Best, whose father Daniel Best had been building steam traction engines since the 1880s, brought the superior track-type tractor designs. Holt brought the famous name and the manufacturing scale. Together they formed what would become the most dominant construction equipment and heavy machinery company on Earth. Here is a fact that almost nobody in the heavy equipment world talks about. Holt did not start building small crawlers because it wanted to. Holt began building small crawler tractors specifically to compete with Cletrac. Rollin White's machines were selling so well in the small agricultural market that Holt felt forced to respond. The competitive pressure ran from Cletrac to Holt, not the other way around. But Caterpillar had advantages that Cletrac could not overcome. The first and most important was diesel power. Caterpillar introduced the Diesel 60 in 1931, the first diesel track-type tractor ever built. On construction projects across the country, diesel engines proved dramatically more fuel efficient than gasoline. At Fort Peck Dam in Montana, just 2 Caterpillar diesels saved $3,000 per year compared to equivalent gasoline tractors. Cletrac did not offer a diesel option until 1933, 2 full years behind. The second advantage was scale and range. Caterpillar offered machines from tiny to enormous, covering everything from small farm work to massive earth moving. Cletrac was concentrated in the small to medium size range and never seriously competed at the heavy end of construction equipment. The third advantage was the dealer network. Caterpillar built a global dealer system that no competitor could match. That ecosystem was strengthened by the partnership with R.G. Letourneau, the inventor who held 299 earth-moving patents and moved his entire factory to Peoria, Illinois, just to be closer to Caterpillar. Together, they created an integrated heavy machinery ecosystem that locked customers in for life. If you are learning something new about the history of construction equipment and heavy machinery in this video, a quick like and subscribe helps us keep making these documentaries for you. The fourth advantage was sheer dominance on the biggest projects. Caterpillar's own records from the 1930s claim that 92% of all track-type tractors working on the largest American construction jobs were Caterpillar machines. At Fort Peck Dam specifically, there were 21 times as many Caterpillar machines working as all other manufacturers' machines combined. Cletrac simply was not in the same weight class. And the fifth reason was pricing and perception. Cletrac was consistently cheaper. The Model W sold for $1,345, while the cheapest comparable Caterpillar cost $2,350. But being the budget option meant Cletrac never built the dealer loyalty, service infrastructure, or brand prestige that Caterpillar accumulated year after year. Being affordable is not the same as being respected. Through the 1930s, Cletrac survived on two things that kept the factory doors open. First, orders from the Civilian Conservation Corps and other public works programs during the Great Depression. CCC crews used Cletracs to build roads, clear forests, and construct infrastructure across America. In Oregon, records show a Cletrac being brought upriver by boat to reach a road construction site in the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest. Without government contracts, the Euclid Avenue factory might have closed a full decade before it actually did. Second, in 1937, the company hired an industrial designer named Lawrence Edwin Blasey, a Cleveland School of Art graduate who had also trained at the Cranbrook Academy and the Slade School of Fine Art in London. Blasey transformed the Cletrac product line from stark and purely functional to streamlined and visually modern. It was part of the same industrial design movement that Raymond Loewy and Henry Dreyfuss were leading across American manufacturing, but Blasey's contribution to the crawler tractor world has been almost entirely forgotten. He later became a renowned watercolor artist whose paintings hang in the Cleveland Museum of Art. He lived to age 97. The most successful model Cletrac ever produced was the HG series, introduced in 1939 and built through 1951. It used a Hercules 3-cylinder gasoline engine, producing roughly 22 drawbar horsepower and about 25 belt horsepower. It weighed between 3,200 and 3,500 pounds and came in 4 different track gauge options ranging from 31 inches to 68 inches, covering everything from vineyard narrow to wide row agricultural work. It could pull 2,800 pounds, 80% of its own weight, at a fuel consumption of just 1.5 gallons per hour. Priced at approximately $2,000, 29,930 HG crawlers were built, making it the single most produced Cletrac model in the company's entire history. And here is something that shows just how far ahead of its time Cletrac engineering really was. In the late 1940s, approximately 200 HG units were built with rubber tracks instead of steel. They called it the HGR. Rubber track technology on a production crawler tractor, roughly 40 years before Caterpillar would commercialize the idea with the Challenger series in the 1980s. But the early rubber belts stretched under load, and stones damaged them during normal field use. Oliver Corporation and 3 major rubber companies invested significant effort trying to make the system work. When they could not solve the durability problem, they did something remarkable. They issued a voluntary recall and converted every single HGR machine back to steel tracks at no cost to the owner. Surviving HGR models are among the rarest collector items in the antique tractor world today. For construction and land clearing work, the BD series became Cletrac's industrial bulldozer workhorse. Introduced in 1936, It used a Hercules 6-cylinder diesel engine producing 83 flywheel horsepower. Drawbar pull reached 7,530 pounds. Top speed was 5.4 miles per hour. Approximately 5,500 BD crawlers were built over a 20-year production run, commonly fitted with Heil hydraulic bulldozer blades and Carco winches for logging and road clearing. It was the machine that proved Cletrac could compete outside of farming, even if the company arrived in the bulldozer and construction market later than Caterpillar. The largest Cletrac ever built was the FDE, produced from 1945 to 1953 under Oliver ownership. It was powered by a 6-cylinder diesel engine, displacing 895 cubic inches, nearly 15 liters, and producing an estimated 162 belt horsepower. It weighed 29,760 pounds, nearly 15 tons. One surviving FDE, owned by a collector named Bob Burkhouse of Bradford, Pennsylvania, was once used in the oil fields of that state. Then came the war, and the war changed everything. The M2 high-speed tractor was Cletrac's most important military contribution. Designated internally as MG-1, it was designed exclusively as an aircraft tug for the United States Army Air Forces. Ground crews and pilots gave it a nickname that stuck: the Bomber Nurse. The machine was built around a Hercules 6-cylinder engine displacing 404 cubic inches and producing 150 horsepower at 3,000 RPM, with 312 foot-pounds of torque. It weighed between 13,800 and 14,700 pounds. Top speed was 22 miles per hour with the governor unlocked, and 15 miles per hour at governed speed. Standard equipment included a 10,000-pound Garwood winch with 300 feet of cable, a 3-kilowatt auxiliary generator producing 110 volts direct current, a 3-stage air compressor rated to 2,000 pounds per square inch, and a nitrogen bottle for aircraft tire servicing. This was not just a tug, it was a mobile aircraft maintenance station on rubber tracks. Those tracks were specifically engineered not to tear up paved airfield surfaces, and the machine had a minimum turning radius of just 10.5 feet. Total M2 production reached 8,510 units. Cleveland Tractor Company built 6,320 of them, confirmed by Army Ordnance acceptance records. 111 were completed in 1941, 2,911 in 1942, 2,421 in 1943, 641 in 1944, and 236 in the final months of 1945. The remaining roughly 2,190 M2 tractors were manufactured by John Deere under license. 26% of every bomber nurse that towed American aircraft during World War II was built by a company famous for green farm tractors. You will almost never find this fact mentioned in any official history of either company. M2 Cletracs operated at airfields across every theater of the war. Photographic records confirm them towing B-17 Flying Fortresses, B-24 Liberators, B-29 Superfortresses, P-47 Thunderbolts, P-38 Lightnings, and PBJ Mitchell bombers. They served on Pacific Island airfields at Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. They operated in the China-Burma-India theater, pulling bombers through monsoon mud. And at RAF Duxford in England, the Imperial War Museum still has an M2 on display, in excellent condition. The military paid well for these machines. 2 major contracts totaled $24,730,000. Contract 303-ORD-1091 was worth $13,790,000, awarded in December 1941 and completed in January 1943. Contract 303-ORD-4950 was worth $10,940,000. awarded in March 1943 and completed a year later. But the contracts masked a deeper problem. Profit margins on defense work were thin. Research and development costs for new civilian products were mounting. Factory tooling was wearing out from relentless wartime overuse. And domestic tractor sales had dried up entirely because every machine rolling off the line was going straight to the military. The war that made Cletrac famous was also bleeding the company to death. If you have stayed with us this far, through the story of one of America's most important and most forgotten tractor companies, consider hitting like and subscribe. We spent weeks researching this one, and the ending is something we think you will not expect. On October 31st, 1944, Oliver Farm Equipment Company purchased Cleveland Tractor Company. That single transaction ended nearly 3 decades of White family ownership. The tractor company that Rollin had envisioned on a pineapple plantation and funded with sewing machine money now belonged to someone else. The same day, at a stockholders' meeting, Oliver changed its corporate name to the Oliver Corporation to reflect the expanded product line. Oliver invested $3.5 million in the aging Cleveland plant to develop new products and modernize the production lines. The Cletrac brand did not die overnight. It faded in stages, each one more painful than the last for the people who had built it. Through the late 1940s, products were still marketed as Oliver Cletrac, and the brand carried recognition among farmers and equipment operators who trusted the name. By 1949, the OC designation quietly replaced the Cletrac name on all new models. OC-3, OC-6, OC-12, OC-18. The letters still stood for Oliver Cletrac, but few buyers made that connection anymore. And then came the colors. The signature Cletrac orange that had marked every machine since 1916 was first replaced by Oliver Meadow Green in 1946. Then by 1951, it was changed again to Highway Yellow. The identity was being erased one layer at a time. First the name, then the color, then the memory. Cleveland Tractor remained unprofitable under Oliver until the Korean War briefly revived military orders. The largest crawler Oliver ever produced under the Cletrac engineering legacy was the OC-18, an impressive diesel machine with a 14.7-liter 6-cylinder engine producing 161 flywheel horsepower. It ran on a 78-inch gauge with 26-inch track shoes, and it still used Cletrac-style controlled differential steering, making it unique in the American crawler market at a time when every competitor had long since switched to other systems. And then came the twist that turns this story from industrial history into something closer to a Greek tragedy. In 1960, White Motor Corporation purchased Oliver Corporation as a wholly owned subsidiary. White Motor Corporation, the company that Rollin White's own family had co-founded decades earlier. The very corporate bloodline that had given Rollin his engineering education, his factory floor training, and the family fortune that funded Cleveland Tractor Company in 1916, now owned the company he had built. The circle was complete. In 1961, White Motor closed the Cleveland factory at 19,300 Euclid Avenue and consolidated all production to Charles City, Iowa. In 1965, White Motor discontinued all crawler tractor production entirely. The family that created Cletrac also killed it. The chain of destruction continued. White Motor Corporation acquired Cockshut Farm Equipment in 1962 and Minneapolis Moline in 1963. All three were merged into White Farm Equipment Company in 1969. In 1979, White sold the farm equipment division to TIC Investment Corporation. And in 1980, White Motor Corporation itself became insolvent. The sewing machine fortune that had funded steam cars, speed records, a White House automobile, a Hawaiian tractor prototype, and 40,000 crawler tractors sold across 70 countries was gone. Every dollar of it. Rollin Henry White did not live to see the worst of it. He passed away on September 10, 1962, in Hobe Sound, Florida, at the age of 90. He is buried at Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland, the same cemetery as John D. Rockefeller and President James Garfield. He died just 1 year after White Motor closed the factory he had founded, but 2 years before they ended crawler production entirely. Today, no historical marker stands at 19,300 Euclid Avenue in Cleveland. No plaque commemorates the factory where 1,500 workers once built machines that plowed American farms, cleared Depression-era roads, towed Allied bombers across Pacific islands, and steered American tanks across European battlefields. The building is either demolished or repurposed beyond recognition. We could not confirm which, but the legacy survives in places where people care enough to remember. On May 3, 2011, Rollin Henry White was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in Washington, D.C. for patent 650, 9,837, and patent 1,250, 3,319. 8. White family descendants attended the ceremony, including his granddaughter, Betty King, the family historian who had driven the nomination effort for years, and his great-grandson Rollin White IV. In 2014, White was inducted into the Association of Equipment Manufacturers Hall of Fame, alongside E.G. Melroe, the creator of the Bobcat. The collector community keeps the machines alive. At the 2016 Centennial Show in Canandaigua, New York, organized by the Hart Parr Oliver Collectors Association, over 300 Oliver-related exhibits were displayed in what historians described as the largest showing of Cletrac and Oliver crawlers ever assembled. Roland Blights brought the oldest known Cletrac, serial number 101. Bob Burkhouse brought the largest, his 1945 FDE. And Landis Zimmerman of Ephrata, Pennsylvania, widely regarded as the foremost living Cletrac historian, delivered the keynote. A semi-retired banker from Iowa named Albert Duro assembled what experts described as the most complete collection of antique Cletrac crawlers in the world, including all but 2 of the roughly 40 distinct model types. There is a website called Cletrac.org that has been running for over 25 years. It was founded by Blake Malkamaki, whose grandfather Howard Van Driest was an experimental engineer at Cleveland Tractor Company. The knowledge is being preserved, one machine and one family story at a time. Rollin Henry White held 100 patents. He built the fastest steam car in America. He invented a steering system that guided every American light and medium tank in World War II for 13 consecutive years. He founded a company that sold tracked machines across 70 countries, built over 8,000 military aircraft tugs, and employed 1,500 people at its peak. He personally underwrote loans for employees who wanted to establish Cletrac dealerships, a practice that was remarkably generous for his era. And yet today, if you ask most people in the construction equipment industry who Rollin White was, or what Cletrac means, they will not know. The company that helped build American farms, that helped win World War II, and that invented steering technology 70 years ahead of Caterpillar, left no marker, no monument, and no museum exhibit in the city where it was born. That is the rise and fall of Cletrac, the Cleveland Tractor Company, a lost giant that deserved to be remembered. If this documentary taught you something new about American manufacturing and the heavy equipment history that shaped this country, we would genuinely appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe. We have more stories like this one coming, and every one of them starts with a company or a machine that the rest of the world forgot.